Hello everyone, Eva here, and welcome to the next episode of Art Side of Life, where I chat with inspiring artists and create various art-related videos. Before we go to the interview, I wanted to let you know that my course Storytelling with Color and Light is now available for you at artsideoflife.com/color. I designed the course for beginner and intermediate artists, breaking the big topic of color and light into smaller parts to help you understand the main concept so you can make your artworks appealing and believable. So check it out at artsideoflife.com/color. And now, let's go back to the interview. My guest today is David Colman, better known as Davidsdoodles online. David is an illustrator who has worked as a visual development artist, character designer, story artist, and art director in the animation industry since 2003. His clients include Disney, Sony, Blue Sky Studios, Jim Henson's company, Hasbro, Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and many others. He's widely known for his animal character illustration work and his self-published numerous books about the subject. And now, please welcome David, and let's go to the interview. Welcome everyone to the next episode of Art Side of Life, and I'm super happy to have David here. Hi!
Hello, hi everyone, how you doing?
Oh, hi, I'm super happy that you joined us today, and let's just jump in right away to your background and how you got to art, and maybe before that you can share, maybe do you remember how your childhood smelled like?
Okay, what my childhood smelled like? Do you really mean that question? Wonderful, I guess you could say. I mean, for me, I just like most kids, I drew a lot when I was younger. And, it started with drawing with one of the first artists that kind of got me into art was Frank Frazetta. I mean, he's basically the one who inspired me to become an artist. I'd have to actually take a step back and say my mother, because my mom's an artist, so she kind of encouraged me at an early age. And but never forced me. None of my parents forced me. And my uncle was an artist. My grandfather was an artist. But my uncle's in advertising. My grandfather just a side gig. My mom just for a hobby. And then Frank Frazetta was the first professional illustrator that I came across. I really loved his work. I did a bunch of I drew like comic stuff when I was younger, and then in high school I just kind of gave it up for sports, and I didn't want to be like comic book nerd, and I kind of lost interest in my art skills. Yeah. And I went away to college. I went to UC Santa Barbara. I didn't go to art school. I went to UC Santa Barbara to study communication. I thought I would go into advertising. Mm-hmm. And when I was up there, I fell in love with my drawing again, and I looked into double majoring, but it was like draw what you feel, and it was a very liberal art take to art. It was not about fundamentals, So when I got out of school, I didn't even know animation could be a career. Like I showed a bunch of my stuff. Fortunately, my father was an attorney, and he didn't force me down the road to be an attorney. He wanted me to be a doctor, which I just can't stand the sight of blood, so that was not going to happen. And he likes being an attorney, and he told me, be lucky that you found something you want to do. 90% of the job force hates their job. Be one of the 10%. So he was very encouraging in the pursuit of my career. And he somehow through him, I met someone at Disney, and I met a few people at Disney early on, a recruiter, a couple of producers, and then all of my work, they said you'd be a great character designer. You have a natural ability to capture personality and characters. I was like, well, you have to go to art school and Cal Arts stuff. Like, no, not so much anymore. Like, you can just go to the animators union and stuff. So I took a bunch of classes from local trade schools. I somehow talked my way into the life drawing class at Disney Television Animation. I think one thing I learned.
How was it somehow, if you can elaborate on that? Because a lot of people are usually interested, how you get to these first things or trainings.
Yeah. I mean, how'd I get into that life drawing class? Well, one thing you'll know from me after this interview is I can talk. I can talk. I could sell a picture book to the blind somehow. I used to be very shy when I was younger, which is hard for many people to believe, even my wife. But I turned to my father, I think, as I got older, and he's not shy. Yeah. So I think it was just a matter of talking to the recruiter on the phone. Mm-hmm. His name was Joe Caggiano, and I don't even know if he's in the industry anymore. But we just talked a lot. I don't even know how I got his number. And by the end of the conversation, he's like, do you want to come to a life drawing class? And I was like, right. And I just kind of got in so I did those. I mean, so I don't really have a magic answer. There's no magic button or secret
you called the person. That's the action step.
Yeah. I mean, most art, one thing I have to say, just a side note, and I'll continue my story because it's interesting, but most artists are introverted. So, I'm definitely an extrovert. I guess I'm a shameless self-promoter, you should say. And just opening up and talking to people is a skill that shy or ashamed to show your work to people. That's the only way you're going to get better. Don't be the greatest artist that no one ever heard of. That's like the best. That's like a good advice. I met someone once. He said he was an amazing artist. I said, "Can I see your work?" He goes, "Oh, I don't show it to anyone." I was like, "Oh, okay. So how does anyone know you're that great if you don't show it to anyone?" Anyway, talked my way into those classes. Took a bunch of small classes at the Animators Union, and became more self-taught. Like I studied anatomy for a year. I was working at my dad's law firm during the day, and then I'd take class at night, and then I'd stay up till like 2 a.m. just like studying whatever I could from books. And, like I said, I didn't go the typical route of the big art schools. It's good and bad. I don't, like going to those big schools, and all of you out there who go to big art schools, don't shy away from it if you're in and you're already going down that path, because you have a built-in network. And what I mean by that is that you have a built-in connection to people who went to that school. People went to Art Center, Cal Arts, went to what's the school in Toronto? I can't think of it right now. Starts with the S. Starts with the S. I can't. Anyway, a lot of the bigger schools. I just wanted to name not just schools in California, but they will see that on a resume, and if they possibly went to that school or know people went to that school, immediately you get your foot in the door. So that is already a benefit. So you are paying for that secret key, and also you get really good really fast when you go to these big schools. With me, I was very self-motivated. So then I got a job in the mailroom at Disney through a temp agency, and I kind of worked my way up that way. It's like the Steven Spielberg story, they say. And I would deliver mail to people, and then I would also like drop off drawings at their desk, and ask them things, and learned a lot about paper cuts, delivering mail, but also a lot from different artists, like artists that you've interviewed here, John Navarez and Steven Silver. They were artists there. They were both working on Kim Possible at the time. I think Steven was on Clerks. And I would kind of ask them questions about things, and they'd always help me. And here was this young kid, probably annoying to them, but they either saw something in me and they just would go over my drawings with me and talk to me. And I was still going to life drawing classes there. And then I worked up into a PA position, which is production assistant, on a Winnie the Pooh movie. And at that point I was trying to get into the industry, but I was already so jaded because I was told constantly I didn't have the experience. I didn't have I didn't have the experience, so I wasn't in the Animators Union, and it was frustrating for me. And then at that time, Sony Pictures Animation was opening a studio, and I sent my work in, and I was already like, they're just going to reject me. And I think I was 24 at the time, and an artist, and I remember saying, I don't think I'm ready. And an artist with me, he's like, a true artist will never be ready. It's a journey. There's no end point. If there's an end point, you might as well take up like mountain climbing or something. So I sent in my work, and Sony called me back. And they said, we got your work. We really I thought they were going to call me back and ask where to send my portfolio back, because that's where I constantly am told, because I don't have the experience. I'm not in the union, all this stuff. So they called me and they said, yeah, we want to talk to you. I said, great. They said, did you send us an updated resume? I said, yes. They said, well, it says you're a production assistant on a Winnie the Pooh movie. I was like, yeah. And they said, but your art is beautiful. I said, oh, thank you. And said, we'd like to talk to you. And can you come in for an interview? I said, great. And they said, can you bring in your artwork? I said, well, I sent you a portfolio. They said, no, we want to see your originals. And I was like, okay, why do they want to see that? And at the time, I was friends with the great Paul Felix. I befriended a lot of the top people at Disney when I was there, because once again, I'm shameless self-promoter and annoying. And I say I'm more probably annoying than anything. An extrovert for them, and it's a nice way to say it. So I asked Paul that. He said, well, don't leave your originals there. That's kind of weird. And so that weekend I went up and gathered all my stuff, and I showed up with a box of artwork stacked in folders, and I laid it all out. And I remember meeting Sandy Rabin. She's one of the top executives in the industry. She helps our DreamWorks Animation, Sony Pictures Animation. She's now, I think, at Paramount. She asked me why I wasn't working, and I told her the same thing. I'm like, well, I'm not in the union. I don't have the experience. I was getting sick of telling the story. She says, does Disney know you're here? I said, no, they think I'm at a dentist appointment. And she's like, okay. She's like, well, let's see your work. And so I showed it to her. And the reason why they asked for my originals is they thought I was stealing from everyone, because they thought I'd copied people's artwork because I had all this raw talent they saw, but I had no resume. I hadn't worked in the industry. I hadn't had a job. So they're like, they wanted to call me out. They thought maybe that I was stealing people's art. And it was a backhanded compliment, but it was a compliment at the same right. And they're like, great, this is yours. When can you start? And I was like, I don't know, 5 minutes ago. You know, it was like a dream come true overnight. I got like an attorney, and I was thrown onto the Polar Express movie. I didn't design the scary children, everyone out there. I just did a bunch of the animals. And it was me. And then I got, because Sony Animation wasn't ready yet. And then it was me. They hired Marcelo Vignali, Richard Chavez was there, and Paul Lassane. I was like with this dream team of artists. And Marcelo mentored me. And awesome. He's still a life mentor for sure. And a good friend, and a very good friend. I actually working with him at Sony again. And then I worked on Open Season, did a little bit on Surf's Up, and then like the rest is history. But that's kind of how it happened to me. I don't recommend my path to everyone, but everyone's path is different. And when people ask how to get in the industry, like I said, there's no magic answer. There's no class. There's no specific class you could take. There's no specific button you could push. There's no blue or red pill you could take. Just know that it's a journey, and what works for some people doesn't always work for others, and vice versa. Yeah. So I hope that was informed, Yeah.
And what helped you the most, to develop your skills? As you mentioned that you asked questions, people when you were still working as PA, or was there something else you did? Like, did you talk to them along the coffee, or did you, as you mentioned, like drop the? So what was the thing? How did you get the feedback, or how did you?
When you're like me, you're just so ambitious and motivated and passionate. I mean, I honestly, like, I would show them a lot of my individual drawings. I mean, a lot. Let's go back to what really makes you a good, what will help you succeed from a just traditional standpoint is just a serious amount of fundamentals. Your imaginative work will not hold any weight without it based on some sort of realistic principles. So, for instance, tons of figure drawing. Like, I studied anatomy and life drawing and animal drawing for a year straight every day. I didn't do anything else. I didn't take. Back then, digital painting was starting to come in, but not as it was still. I know that I sound so analog and so antiquated when I say this, but I think they were still doing cell paints like back then, and email was just coming into like fruition. There were no websites or anything like that. I mean, everyone nowadays has such an advantage, because this is how I think students and artists are so good so young, because they have access to all this material online and online courses, and they can contact a lot of us professionals. And in the industry, 95% of us are very nice and are going to give you our time. And so back then, like I said, I just studied like anatomy and figure drawing as much as possible, and then I took a lot of classes, and then and then even like perspective, and then I like slowly started doing some. I only took one character design class, and I already had an imagination there. I mean, that was already there, and the idea, like I told you, I had a natural sense of capturing personality. Then it was a matter of basically taking that and using the fundamentals I learned to make believable characters. And over time, I learned what good design was. That I learned from people like Steven Silver and Jose Lopez, and studying the work of even Rick Mackey. Paul Felix showed me a lot of stuff. I took a Disney television animation, a lot of free classes, and I remember taking a layout class with, oh God, what is his name? I can't remember his name right now. Jim Schlenker. Jim Schlenker is a very good friend of Paul Felix, and Paul came and was a guest lecturer, and I remember I showed him my stuff, and he was looking at it, and he's like, man, what do you do here? And I'm like, I work in shipping. And he was like, he couldn't believe it. He's like, you work in shipping? He's like, Jim, this guy works in shipping. What is he doing in shipping? So he showed me some stuff, and he's like, well, I'll help you. And I remember drawing a bunch of Tinkerbell drawings, and he would kind of help me, show me how to kind of do some visual development. And some things that he has told me to this day still stick in my head, and they're not any like secrets or anything, these are the skills that I helped develop, and I moved on from there. And then over time, we're students forever. I'm always learning, whether from myself or someone else. This is why I try to draw for myself every day, not give everything to studio. But I even learn a lot just by working every day. And then, about almost 10 years ago, I somehow fell into storyboarding. So I now am a story artist and a character designer. And it's like in the art of storytelling, I learn something new all the time, and story structure and writing. So there's a whole aspect of my career that way that's given me a new life to my career over the last 10 years.
So what was maybe the best advice or something you ever received? As you mentioned that a lot of these things stick into your head and just like are still with you. Can you mention some specific examples?
Yeah, they're all kind of like, well, they're not cliches, I should say. They're almost like things that sound obvious, but they're good to hear. Just remember, it's a journey. There's no end point. Okay. You're constantly, and like I said, if there was an end point, you might as well give up and do something else. But that's the tortured artist syndrome. You're never good enough. There's only temporary. There's only satisfaction is only temporary. True satisfaction is consolation prize for like a lesser artist. And never take anything personal. So when you're getting criticisms from even teachers, and it should be constructive criticism, or things from directors, or when like a scene of mine doesn't land, or the character is not working, it's nothing about you and your skill level. It's hard to not take it personal. We're artists. We do this because we're personal people, and this is a very personal craft and passion and love we have for what we're doing. So it's very hard to kind of separate from that, I should say. Sorry, brain fart for a second. And so like like I said, when a scene doesn't land or anything, just remember it's really about the production or the job at hand, not about your art in general. Those are two things that always stick in my head. And another thing that I could give to you that I have learned, and one thing that I'm complimented on a lot, is being good to work with, having integrity as an artist, maintaining your integrity is just being a good person. I'm constantly told that people really enjoy working with me because I'm always doing whatever's best for the project. I'm usually try to pride myself on being very agreeable with others and collaborative and open to ideas, whether it be from another artist, one who's even maybe, if I'm a supervisor, maybe if I'm their supervisor, they might have a good idea. Great ideas come from anywhere, whether it be director, so on and so forth, and just being open to things, being, I guess, humble. When you say you're humble, it really means you're not. But I'm saying like have some sort of to be able to be humble in your situation and because there's tons of, I'm 40, almost 42 now, and there are tons of artists that are really good that are 10 years younger than me. And I think there's a bit of envy on my end, but at the same time, I also look at their work and I can learn from them, and I'm sure there's something I could teach them. Probably not much, but that's why I said it's always being like having integrity and being good to work with. These are things that are not the obvious things that people would tell you in terms of tips and stuff like that. In terms of the actual hard, concrete tips, fundamentals, I'll say it again, don't get into digital painting without studying traditional painting. Don't get into drawing characters without learning to study the human figure. Be able to draw the human figure out of your head. Don't design an animal creature without spending some time at a zoo and studying from life. So I hope these kind of stick with you. I hope this kind of helps.
Yeah, definitely. And do you still go to, like zoo, or do you have time to actually study from real life?
I would love to. I taught animal drawing for 10 years at the zoo, so I can draw most animals out of my head. I go to the zoo now with my kids, so I can't exactly take out my sketchbook. I haven't been to the zoo to draw for myself in I don't know how long, and it's kind of frustrating, but it's life, I mean, I have a wonderful life, so it's not something like I'm really gonna, harbor on. And they have figure drawing at Sony, but usually I have meetings or I'm not in that day. And then I've kind of fallen out of love of drawing at coffee shops. I know that's like a thing that a lot of people do, and I used to do that a lot and draw people on the street. I just don't have a passion for it anymore. I do it now and then, and I'll see some characters and I'll just sketch some stuff out. But most of the characters I'm drawing now are just for design. It's not that I still don't. I mean, like I said, I still draw for myself every day, but my main passion is animal illustration. So usually that's what I'm drawing for myself each day, and I'm learning that way about shapes and stuff. And my skill of being able to capture personality does not go away, for that matter. But the reality is that when you start working in the industry, you do lose that personal time. But this is what you got into this industry for. So this is one other piece of advice, actually, bringing me to another point, and I started to step back a little bit. Never stop doing what you love, and never stop drawing for yourself. It reminds you why you do what we do for a living. I met an artist by the name of Dana. I forgot what Dana's last name is. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. He was an artist at Disney on a show called House of Mouse, and I was getting a tour of Disney. I was probably like 22, and I was just so happy to be there. I'm like, oh, work here for pixie dust. I don't care. You don't have to pay me. I was just this young kid, and I remember meeting him, and he said, just whatever you do when you get into the industry, if you get that far, don't stop doing what you love. He said, I used to draw monsters all the time when I was at CalArts. Now I stopped doing it, and now all I do is draw Mickey Mouse every day, and I'm miserable. And it's very saddening to hear that, because it's like he lost himself, And you don't want that to happen, because if you lose sight of who you really are in this business, then you'll be to a certain level, and you'll be like, why am I even doing this anymore? So I've heard some things people say, I only draw now when I get paid, and that's terrible to hear, if I'm in this business because I love it. It's been fortunate that I've been able to make a successful career out of it and support a family, and get by and feed myself and clothe my kids and feed them and so on and so forth. But there's a passion for this as a craft, and we do it because we love it, And if you find something you love doing, whether it's maybe you want to be a plumber, I don't know, there's a way you will be successful at it, So I don't know what, I think we got sidetracked there, but that's basically it. I just tend to go off tangent. Like I told you at the beginning of this interview, I talk. So you're in for it. Anyway.
Yeah, but then as you mentioned, like the passion, right? And you cannot really do this job without the passion, because it's not easy, and you want to give up maybe many times. So before we continue, let's thank our sponsors. If you are a digital artist, you will love AstroPad. AstroPad is an app that turns your iPad Pro into professional wireless graphics tablet for your Mac. I use it to work with Photoshop and Illustrator to create highly rendered artworks for my clients directly on my iPad. I was super excited to discover AstroPad because the painting apps available on iPad don't have all the functionality like Photoshop. With AstroPad, I can use all my favorite and custom-made Photoshop brushes, which is super cool. And because you are part of Artside of Life community, you will get an exclusive 10% discount on AstroPad Studio licenses. To get started, go to artsideoflife.com/astropad and enter the promo code ARTSIDE. Are you looking for a top quality print shop and online store to sell your art prints? Then you should definitely check out InPrint. InPrint has been helping artists print and sell gallery quality prints of their work all over the world for over a decade. Created by artists for artists. InPrint ensures that you as an artist get your artworks printed in the highest quality and you earn the highest percentage compared to the others in the industry. The online gallery at inprint.com is curated by the members, resulting in a beautiful and unique collection of work. Support your favorite artists, discover new ones, and start selling through your own gallery today. And because you are part of Artside of Life community, you will get a special 10% discount with the promo code ARTSIDE. Don't wait, visit artsideoflife.com/inprint and use promo code ARTSIDE. And now, let's go back to the interview. So if you think about your designs, you mentioned the personality, and what would you say is your a biggest specialty in the animal design, and maybe something the character designers don't know yet and they should?
Well, most character designers know quite a bit. There's the obvious of shape design and all that stuff. I think the hardest thing, the thing that I was even in a meeting yesterday, being launched on an assignment, and one thing they kept talking about, these shapes of this character are, we kind of like this, but we're missing the personality. And I think that is what I bring. Personality and energy is my personal brand, I think, especially with my animal work. To make it feel alive, make it feel like it really exists there, make it feel like like you can look at a drawing of a character and you know who that character is. Like an audience member, a director, producer can look at the one image I did and they know the story of that character, or they want to get to know that character. And there's something that draws them to that character. And that's all summed up under the umbrella of appeal. Appeal is that you want to make your professional design work appealing. And by appealing, like to break that even more, it's pleasing to look at on simple layman's terms. And with that being said, that comes across with, so there's one thing to be pleasing to look at, which could be like a simple silhouette. It's very pleasing to the eye. It's not so hard to look at. It's something that makes someone feel good about themselves, or there's some sort of like the I should say the pleasure neurons in the brain are firing. Like for instance, if you have to if when a silhouette is actually complicated, if it's got all these jagged edges and all this stuff, every time the form, the contour changes direction, your synapses in your brains turns on and off, go boom, boom, boom. And that's unpleasing from a physical standpoint for your brain and your eyes to view that. So the simpler the silhouette, this is kind of the physicality of why a simple silhouette is important. So the simpler silhouette, the more pleasing it is for the viewer, and that's why they will gravitate towards it and they'll continue to look at it. Once you capture attention with like kind of a silhouette, then it's a matter of maintaining and keeping their attention through personality, interesting shapes, rhythms, either some sort of energy. Sometimes it's coloring, the way you execute your color theory with it. Sometimes execution of the illustration, so on and so forth. All these things that keep the viewer engaged is the better word to say. So I think that's something kind of as a whole to think about. And once again, it's going over the idea of like appeal overall. And I think when I do work, and this now translates to my story work too. So it's definitely part of my brand. But when I do work that has that I can move someone in terms of I can make them laugh, I can make them cry, I can touch a nerve with them, I know I've done a good job. Like, for instance, many people have come to this on a personal level. I have like booths at Comic-Cons and stuff, and I sell stuff like shameless self-promotion, sell T-shirts, I have prints, and I love seeing people's reaction when they're looking at my prints, and whether even they buy it or not, they're like, oh my God, I love this. This is so cute. Look at look at this. Hey, Dan, look at this. Oh my God, this is so funny. This bear, look at the expression on him. So I know my art is moving people, and that's what makes it all worth it. That makes me feel really good. And translate that to design in actually a professional standpoint for jobs. I mean, when people look at it and go like, oh my God, this is who he is, or that's such a funny take, we never thought about that, I know I'm doing my job. I've storyboarded a couple sequences when I worked at Paramount on a film. I think I can say the name, Amusement Park. It was a roller coaster of a film, no pun intended, but there was a sequence I did, it's not in the film, but it was very emotional, and I drove a lot of people to tears in it. And I was like, wow, I really was able to tell a story convincingly through pictures, with acting and staging and cinematography and how I blocked in the shots and move people to tears. I'm like, that's how I know I did my job too. So there's definitely something to that extent. And I don't know if that answers your question, but hopefully it does.
Yeah, definitely, because then you can still think like, okay, how you can create the emotional connection with your audience, and that's one of the most important things, because if there is no connection, then the design can be amazing, but they're like, yeah, okay, it's pretty, and that's it.
Yeah, well, that is true, because it ends up being dead inside. You're like, ooh, that's cool to look at, but what else does it have? All the icing in the cake won't disguise the cake from tasting poorly if it was baked incorrectly. I curbed my bad language there, but it's exactly, that's the way to look at it. Like I think there's a famous saying, you can't dress up a pig, it's still a pig, type thing.
Or what is it? Put makeup on a pig, I
Right
think?
there,
Or, yeah,
there we
that
go.
was the
That's
thing,
it. That's
right?
putting lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. Although pigs are cute, so I don't really know. I think pigs are cute in their own
Yeah,
right. So.
it's true. But how did you then practice to, the putting the personality on the characters? Did you do maybe live drawing classes and like, okay, this model will be now this animal, or or putting the same personality on different animals, or how did you, practice this storytelling?
It's a good question. Once again, it's not a magic answer. I think there was a natural talent there that I developed. But honestly, being able to look at people and I'd ask myself like what their story is. It's kind of silly to say. You kind of get in their head. I mean, because you could see people standing at like, let's say, a coffee shop, and just by the way they're standing, you can tell right away looking at the guy like he's having a rough day, or he doesn't care, or he gave up on life or something. And then there's a few things like posture, brow expression. How open or closed the lids are. Mm-hmm. Those few like kind of tent poles, I think, are a good way to kind of communicate that person's personality. I think that's the best way. So through observation a lot, and drawing is more thinking than actual drawing. A friend of mine, Paul Wee, said that. I can't take credit for it, and it's true. So a lot of times, a lot of it is observation and trying to understand. You think like where that person is coming from, and this kind of takes in effect, even when drawing, professionally, like for a job or something, you ask your question, who is he, not what is he? You always want to know who the character is, not what they are. That's the big difference. Yes, it's a tiger, but who is he? Well, it's an inferior tiger who is afraid of mice, so there's something, and has a problem overcoming his own fears in life. I mean, that is who he is. So that's something you try to start. So that will then translate into what shapes are indicative of a character who's inferior. Well, you're not going to have a lot of straights. You're not going to have a lot of squares. That's a character that's rigid and solid and stable. You're going to have a lot more rounds. Kind of won't be standing up, proud with his spine arched. Probably more hunched over. Softer shapes. Usually a lot more space, like kind of in the eyes, be very expressive for that matter. And so those are things that you kind of just learn over time, like what are the right shapes to kind of attach to that personality, So I think that's kind of like, I think observation is key. And honestly, like really taking the time to understand who that character is and watching actors. A lot of times we are asked, well, we would think this character in this movie, would play this, character in our film, and it have to be something that's very clear. So Tom Hanks in Road to Perdition, it's very clear. I don't know if you've seen the movie, but it's very clear who he is. Obviously he's an assassin and stuff, but he's a very rigid, conservative, formidable. He is formidable to a certain extent because he's a killer, and even cold, which is so opposite of what Tom Hanks normally plays, and who he is from what I can tell. I met him and worked with him briefly. And so those things right there, it's like, okay, so if I'm watching film and like, hey David, we've got this giraffe character, and I'm known for my animals, so I just throw out giraffe, and it be played. We kind of think of like the way Tom Hanks played his character in Road to Perdition. So then I know right away I can watch that film and study even the expressions and how he handles himself. He's a very controlled character, almost controlled like Clint Eastwood is in $1 Million Baby. So there's a hardness to them. So then that I will associate a lot of the things I see in that character, how that actor plays that character, that film, and then relate it and translate it to my design work for my assignment. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. Because then you also, as you mentioned, that you are really interested in humans and you do the observation. So I think when you mention also your talent, that's that you are really interested in people around you. So that kind of strengthens your observation. So it's really like a different skill level there.
It is. I think you have to realize that you're studying every day, even if you're not putting pencil to paper or brush to canvas or stylus to tablet. or finger to iPad, I guess these days. I love clouds. I'm fascinated with clouds. I love the magical golden hour at the end of the day, that pink hue. I just saw The Incredibles yesterday, and they had some beautiful shots in that movie, just gorgeous, color palettes. But as you're looking, you're kind of retaining that information. The way some people stand on the corner when you're stopped at a stoplight. You're like, oh, I never thought about a pose that way. Well, look at the way the clothes hang off the shoulders. Look at the way the blazer touches the kind of the points on the shoulder, and it drapes. Look at the dappling shadows, how it comes through the leaves of the trees. Oh, that's an interesting shape for a car. I wonder how I could push that and make it more like caricatured and more like an animated film. So these are things, and watching how people interact with one another. I mean, tons of times. Art imitates life, they always say. And so you could be standing at a market and you see, a husband and wife having a disagreement, or a mom dealing with a tantrum with a baby, which then you see that type of play out in like the Incredibles movie, which is a lot about family and stuff, of course, who are incredible, but who deal with the same trials and tribulations of a normal family and normal everyday life. And then you might take what you see and play that out and storyboard your own sequence, or have an idea for a film, or have an idea for a gag that you're working on in your own project, or want to go home and capture that down. And maybe you capture down in a lioness dealing with her lion cub having a tantrum out on the prairie at the watering hole. But you took those global interactions from everyday life, and now you're injecting it into something that is a little bit more specific. But then it relates to everyone globally, because everyone has seen that tantrum at a store between a mother and child. So remember that you should always have your brain on input. Always be kind of taking it all in, and life is what will make you a better artist in general.
Yeah. Do you sometimes do the notes when you are on location, or you kind of remember when you get home, or you remember later, or how do you, inject this into your artwork?
That's a good question. I mean, yes, I have. I mean, I write notes. I wish I should take a picture of like my desk. I have like scribbled little ideas. A lot of them are laundry list of ideas, and eventually nothing gets done because there's all these notes. But yeah, I will sometimes doodle something even on a sticky note, and I'll put it inside a sketchbook. Maybe I'll never get to it, but I've addressed it. I've put it down. I've recorded it. And maybe some years from now, I'll come back to it. Like, it's funny, you just reminded me, there's this idea for a drawing I've been wanting to do. I try to do personal illustrations all the time. And last night as I was going to sleep, I was like, oh, I didn't write that down. And now that we're having this conversation, now hopefully I remember and I will write it down. And maybe it won't get done, but I feel like I've addressed it. Because as artists, we have thousands of ideas flowing in and flowing out. And some of them you capture. And out of the ones you capture, maybe 30% are you actually execute. And then out of those 30%, maybe 10% you execute well. And, and out of 1%, maybe there's a masterpiece or something. But, it's important to kind of, so constantly recording them. But that really does help, And for instance, a lot of my ideas might come at like washing dishes. And I'm in the middle, I have an assignment, and all of a sudden I know I have to do that assignment, and I remember that the launch that day, whether it be for a sequence or whether it be for a character, like last night I came down with one and I quickly went and I sent myself an email. Remember, try this, blah, 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 blah. And then it shows up, and then it's recorded, and then that way when I sit down, even after this call and I get started on this assignment, it's there and I've recorded and I can start working on it. I've had ideas where I'm working on a storyboarding a sequence at work. It's happened a lot when I was at Paramount, and because I was doing really working hard, doing so many sequences for the film. On my drive home, I come up with a new idea and I would just record it on my phone in my notes or whatever, and then I'd email that to myself. And then a lot of times it shows up like, because I don't know how, when you record something on your phone, it never types it out exactly right. So as long as it's somewhere in the film, it's like something like, so-and-so, Genghis Khan, funny. And I'm like, what's Genghis Khan? It was just, that's how my phone recorded it. But it will trigger the memory. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this works. I have tons of notes like that I go back and I'm like, oh man, I got to delete this just from years ago. But so yes, constantly it's a fluid process. And as an artist, we can never turn it off. A lot of people leave their job, their accounting job, their job as a cook, and I'm not degrading any of these other jobs. I'm just saying professions that are continued more typical. Doctors don't do this because they love what they do. I hope they love what they do because they're saving our lives. But you know, they're constantly thinking about their patients. They care. They're in the business of caring. But with us, we can't really leave our job. You know, we turn our computer off at work or even at home if it's in a studio or at a desk. It's hard to walk away and just completely shut it down and go, okay, now I'm father, now I'm husband or girlfriend or wife, you know, or mother or daughter or whatever. It's constantly on it. It sticks with us. And that's what's so great about what we do. We're getting paid to do something we love and we'd be doing anyway. You know?
So how does your normal day look like now? Do you have a routine, or do you work on projects on certain hours, or it just comes and goes every day? It's different.
It's different. I mean, I'm at Sony right now, but I'm unassigned, which is a great place to be because I get paid to kind of jump around and work on different things. I'm set to go on to a big film starting this summer, and we're just waiting for the outline to come in. So right now I'm doing a lot of running and hanging out with my kids, which is great, but for summer break. But on a typical day, so for me, I like to work in-house. Some people like to freelance. I like to work in-house. Sony's not so close to my house, so what's kind of nice is when this previous call started, I have an actual separate studio. They let me work from home. Typical day, let's just say typical day of going into the studio would be something like get up, be dad and husband and feed the kids to get them to school and stuff, and then get myself together. And one good thing you'll know about most artists is I'm not a morning person. We're all vampires. We do our best creativity at night. At least I do. Although a friend of mine, Pascal Campion, I'm sure you know his work, he gets up, he does his work in the morning. He gets up at like 5:30 and does his work in the morning. So I don't know how he does that. I don't even know what hour that is. 5:30 does not register on my clock. But I'll go into the studio, and then sometimes I'll do warm-up drawings, kind of get myself together. And not just warm-up drawings, but they're drawings for me. I started a sketch group through text message with me, Mark Dindal, who he directed Emperor's New Groove and Chicken Little and Cats Don't Dance. He's an amazing story guy, an amazing artist, and he's become a good friend. And then Christophe, I can never pronounce Christophe's last name, Lautrec, French production designer. He did Crudes and stuff. And another one of my friends, Alex Chow, who is a great amusement park designer. And we do drawings each day as our daily doodle sketch group, and then we send them to each other. Yeah. And it's great to share what we're all doing, but it also inspires us to draw something for ourselves each day. You know, so that's sometimes what I will do in the morning before work starts. Sometimes I'll get too into it and it takes too long. Sometimes I don't have time. If I have a deadline, I get in, I just start working, you know. And then I'll work on my assignments for that day, whether it be like on the film I'll be going on this summer, I'll be doing story. So I will either, let's just say at start of a sequence, I'll thumbnail out ideas, maybe pitch them at some point, work through them. And then obviously, and this sounds boring, I know, but I'm saying like lunch and then continue to work through the end of the day. And sometimes when I'm storyboarding, I usually just listen to music. I'm very big on like classical, but soundtracks like Hans Zimmer and stuff. I love epic soundtracks. It just get me in the mood. I can't listen to music with words. And when I'm boarding, that's usually what I'll do, especially with design. Sometimes when designing, though, I will watch stuff, which is my wife's always like, how do you watch all this stuff while you're working? I'm like, it's just background. It's just background stuff. But it's informative because there's a lot of stuff in films I'll see and I'll be like, oh, I love that shot. I'll pause it and just and it's something that when I'm storyboarding something later, I'll remember it, you know. Oh, it was interesting how they moved the camera with that. And at night, the thing is I usually have a lot of side projects. Like I'm in the middle of writing a live action movie with a friend of mine. It's something I've never done before, and it's very cool since working in a very family-oriented space in terms of entertainment. I'm now working live action where I can deal with cursing and profanity and things of adult nature. And it's kind of fun for me. And then I have my own brand, which is my apparel. So I'm usually working on new designs for the next convention or my own illustrations. So I'll do that stuff at night. Side projects with friends, sometimes freelance, you know. But as long as something is not in direct competition with something with a feature division. So it would be like other like books or TV shows or things like that. And I usually work into the night. and that's that. And then I go to bed, and then, so on and so forth. That's like a typical day,
Yeah.
And then when I'm working from home, it's basically the same. It's just I do that in my own studio space. Instead of getting a car and driving, I just walk to there. So that's kind of how it kind of works out for me, And sometimes things happen in different order. And what's nice with when I'm working from home is I can kind of rearrange schedule if I have to do something with my kids. And one thing I try to do is I try to not work weekend days. I don't lose the time with my kids, because that's time, I'll tell you all, you don't get back. They're 5 and 7. And although I'm passionate about my job, like, my masterpieces are my kids. And in a few years, my daughters are not going to want to hang out with me. I know that. So I take advantage of that. And so, like, I tell clients I will not work on weekends, so I don't sacrifice the time with them. And being a father makes me better artists. Because what's great is I have a built-in audience that I made this. I mean, we're making stuff for them. So I ask them stuff a lot. It's interesting what their observations show me. And I'm like, wow, that's great. And it kind of goes into what, I do. So I will be able to rearrange stuff for family and things like that. It would need be.
Yeah, and as you mentioned that you have like this mastermind group with like texting and this kind of thing, or like communicating with people and these kind of things, and like showing your work. Can you maybe share some tips for people for networking? Because as you mentioned as well, like, a lot of people are introverts, or what you can do, and like, how do you get to know so many people and show your work and these kind of things.
It's a really good question. It's something I always think there should be a class in colleges on networking. I think I would love to teach a class on networking. I think it's something that they don't teach, and it's not. And most artists are introverts. Most artists are they communicate with the world through their art. So, for instance, I think not being afraid to show your work to people nowadays. Like, back then, I would just, like, when I was delivering mail, I would honestly, like, drop off the mail to the person and be like, hey, it's like the art director from, like, Lion King or whatever, and I just, like, would show them, like, hey, can you look at my work, type thing. And usually pretty nice to do that. Nowadays, it's email or websites and stuff, and I get contacted all the time for people to look at their work. And I give this to your viewers out there. I don't have it. You go ahead and give them my email after this. It's okay to make it public. I'm always happy to give back and give you some advice and some tips. Just please be patient, because I get a lot of emails. So contact a lot of us via email. Studios by contacting studios and even asking things like, it's kind of stupid to say this, but I mean, I think maybe even asking for a tour. Be happy to do that. It might seem juvenile, but it gets you inside, gets you to feel. For those of you who haven't worked in the industry, for those of you who are amateurs and up and coming, gets you into that culture and allows you to see kind of how it works and how what the work environment is like. Creating a high online profile. I mean, that right now is very important. I didn't have that coming up. Honestly, my way of visibility was putting drawings up in my cubicle when I was like a production assistant or worked in the mailroom, making silly signs about the copy room and stuff. So social media is a great way to do it. And if people aren't liking your work, go and search people out that you like. And I get people ask me all the time, they'll like my stuff, and then they'll say, hey, can you look at my work? And whether it's good or not, I still go and look at it. And if it's good, I give them, I compliment them, because I know how it feels when someone compliments me and pumps me up. I know when I reach a certain amount of likes on my post, it makes my day. And when I don't, oh, you people crush me. I'm like, this art sucks. I must be terrible. So I think that's having a high online profile. Going to these conventions. A really good way I started doing conventions. I started San Diego Comic-Con 13, 14 years ago, before Hollywood got a hold of it and it got really big, because I saw people doing these little sketchbooks and I'm like, I could do that. And I was like, I want to make a name for myself outside the studio. So that's why I started doing books. And I didn't realize that I was building my brand as an animal illustrator and at the same time building my career. And eventually they cross-pollinated. People sometimes don't associate with my work in the industry. And they're like, wait a minute. Are you the guy at Comic-Con who has all the animal stuff, like Davidsdoodles? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh my God, I bought your shirt or I bought your book or whatever. But having a booth at smaller shows, like, and making little prints and stuff, getting people to know your work, that is considered networking. It's branding for sure on a higher level, but on a smaller level, and in terms of one that deserves some importance, is the idea of like networking, for that matter. I think honestly, just being willing to show your work to a lot of people, not being afraid. I think I started this interview with even saying, don't be the greatest artist no one ever knew, and don't be afraid you need to get feedback, I also, taking a lot of additional classes. Like, I've hired a lot of my students before because I know they've learned the right skills, I've had random people ask to have lunch with me, and I've done it, and then, and I'm not a household name as some other people. I'm definitely not as popular or well known as I don't know, probably not even half the industry, but I'm still able to offer some insight for people, and kind of can get you in a little bit further. And what's great in animation is, like, I've yet to work with someone I don't like. The only person I work with I didn't like, he was a live action director. He shall remain nameless, but that's from a different side of the business, and I know that it can be kind of crazy on that side of the business. But to be honest with you, a lot of us like to give back, and it's nice, when you reach out to someone who you really admire. Like, when I met Paul Felix, I always loved his work, and he was so kind and nice and humble. I was like, oh my God, I like his work even more. A lot of us like to give back, and I'm one of those people. So that's a few tips on networking, and I do think right now also, like, not just having posting stuff on Instagram stuff, but like the YouTube videos, like even starting to talk things about even your trials and tribulations of how you come up in the industry. I mean, it's something a lot of people would probably want to hear, to watch and to hear your process. Because I know people like to see my process more than just looking at my art, So yeah. I don't know. I hope that gives you some insight on networking.
When you are showing as well the process images and stuff, so they know you more also as a person, even though if you don't talk as much. And then, as you mentioned, talking to people and not be afraid to get feedback and all of that. So and also just be okay with saying like what you are good at and maybe what you would like to get a feedback on as well, and taking it, as you mentioned. So
it's good. And me not talking, that's hard to hear. But it's exactly right. And you're getting to know someone a little bit more, and putting a face, with a name and all that stuff really, really, really helps. And like I said, there's no wrong or right way. It's just a matter of how you get there. I mean, that it's a matter of like that you do get there, I should say. It doesn't matter how, it just matters that you do eventually, and remember, it's a journey,
Yeah. And with your art career, what would you consider the hardest time? Because that's when we usually learn the most. What is the story there, maybe?
Well, I mean, always being unemployed sucks. Luckily for me, I'm not so much. And one thing that I do tell people, and that I always do, even when I'm working, even when I'm under contract with Sony, I'm still talking to other studios to let them know that I'm still there, because it's out of sight, out of mind. You want to make sure that they really know that you still exist and you're still around and all this stuff. So constantly, I think, being in the know and knowing what's going on. In terms of one of the hardest parts, that's a good question. I think you'd emailed me that question before or prior. I think it was hard to swallow to see how talented people were coming up out of schools now than when I got in, and like going, oh man, I better really get my act together, and not being bigger than yourself so much, to realize that there are people better than you that may be younger than you. And that's not really, there's always good to have people better than you. I mean, that's what drives you to become better. So if I said like, oh, finding out there's people better than me, that sounds like an egotistical statement, but it's more the fact of realizing like, wow, I never thought of approaching design that way. So I'm constantly, I think the hardest thing about my career is, which is also the best thing, is knowing that you're never good enough. It's hard to swallow, because you're like, I'm never going to get there. Meaning, I'm never going to get to the point where I'm the best artist ever, which It's impossible, you know. I mean, you spend your whole life becoming a good artist, and then you die. So that's why it's important to do other things, you know. Like for me, it's been advantageous to me that I'm not a wrist. I'm an idea guy too, and I've realized that as a storyteller, that your ideas sometimes can actually keep you employed more so than your actual skill level. You know, I think, and so one of the greatest things also was, I guess a hard time in my life is when I was hired at Disney Feature. I was interviewed as character designer, and then Aaron Blaise, I'm sure you know Aaron Blaise. Everyone on the internet knows Aaron now. He was a director on a movie called King of the Elves. Him and Bob Walker did Brother Bear. They interviewed me as a character designer, and then they hired me as a story artist. And there was something in my work they saw was story. And with characters, when you design who they are, not what they are, you're creating a story for that character that inspires the shape design and the setups and the staging and so on and so forth. And the shapes you choose and the personality that translates very well to story. So they saw, like, you deal with story. We know we're throwing you into the fire, but we think you could do it. And I was 5 years established as a designer, and now all of a sudden I had to kind of start over with baby steps as a story guy. So that was kind of hard, but it's been valuable. I mean, I now have a second part of my career that I didn't have before, and I've become valuable to Sony because I'm now treated as a designer and a story guy, so they can throw me into. And on one film, I did design and story. That film was shelved, unfortunately, but I did both. And I was seen as very valuable to the project and to the studio as a whole. So I think that was a tough time in my career because I don't think there's one pinpoint I should be. I mean, people might say, "Oh, it's the time I lost my job, I was broke, I had to sell my house, this sort and that forth." I think for me, there are several instances things that have happened in my career. But I think, like I said, the realizing that you're never really going to be good enough and accepting that. And that's not so much of a tough thing as more, it's like a realization, like, okay, I can breathe and just let it come to me naturally. There's also always this fear, like, you know, that one day the industry is going to wake up and stop paying us as much as they do to do what we do. But I don't think that's going to happen because I know how much money these studios make off movies, and they get us for
industry, yeah.
I know. And entertainment is not a luxury anymore. I think it's a necessity. It really helps get people through tough times and help people with their lives, especially as the stories get richer and more relatable to the global demographic as a whole. So I don't know if that really answers your question because it's not like a certain thing, but I have been fortunate enough to even when I'm unemployed, it's not really for a long time, you know. And I think for me, it's just a matter of whatever has been a tough time in my career, whether realizing how talented these younger people are coming up now and how talented people are at a younger age, and even how talented other people are at my level. It's also been a blessing because it makes me work harder.
Exactly. You know? Yeah. So you learn always more about yourself when you have a tough time. That's why it's always important to reflect on it. So that's really good thing to do.
Yes, and I'll tell you this quote. Ridley Scott said this quote, and there's a famous commercial with Michael Jordan as well. But there's no such thing as failure if you learn from it. Yeah. So just remember that.
Yeah, it's part of the forward.
Fail forward. That's right. Yeah, there's all these like sayings and everything. I mean, but
which have some kind of meaning when you go through it, right? And yeah. So if there is some kind of relation to yourself, then you can say like, yeah, okay, I know what that means. If you didn't, then it's like it doesn't matter.
But that's I've never even like I said, Michael Jordan, the famous Michael Jordan. I think that the commercial is like, I've missed the game-winning. It's his commercial like I've missed the game-winning shot 375 times. You know, I've lost 9,000 games in my career. I think I'm totally going off the numbers, but the point is, look how great he is. So he failed to get where he is. You know. Yeah.
And when you mentioned that you let other studios know that, okay, like I'm still alive, so what do you send them, like, oh, this is my latest artwork, by the way, this is what I'm doing, or how do you, do this kind of connection?
I mean, usually just an email. I don't like to show them artwork because that's I think that can be a little bit pretentious. Mm-hmm. Hey, look what I just did. And they're like, great, we know who you are, we know your art. It's more like,
hey Sherry, I'm just throwing out a fake name. Hey Sherry, how's it going? I just want to say how things are. I saw the new. Sometimes it might be a film I see, and I'll reach out and say, I saw the new yada 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 film. I think that's great. Stuff's looking really good. Are you enjoying? And I make it about them. Always make it about them. Don't make it I, make it you. And that's even a thing, even when I talk to people with, this is like giving away a big secret. It's not really a secret, but usually when I talk to people at my conventions at booths, I talk to them about them, I let the art sell themselves. I'm not going to be like, hey, look at my new book, because that's like the used car salesman thing. Like, well, all right, it's too much. But I usually like to engage people. And people you ask people about themselves, it makes them feel good about themselves, and then they like talking to someone like you, however you engage them. But usually that's what it'll be. I'll ask like how things are going at the studio, and then I'll be like, I'm still here at Sony doing this or whatever. Just want to say hello. Maybe want to get some lunch sometime when I'm over there, or something like that. That's usually like the gist of it. It's just an email. Sometimes they reach out to me, and then when I see them at these conventions type thing, I go up and talk to them. I make it a point to talk to them. But also I like talking to people. That's why I'm here now. Like I like talking to people. So I'm a people person. If you're not a people person, it might be harder for you to do. You might feel a little uncomfortable and out of your element, but it's very important to break out of that shell.
Definitely. You need to talk, right?
Don't be the greatest artist no one ever heard of. Remember, I think it's the third or fourth time I've said that. So that's kind of a way of networking the way I do, And there have been times that I've been out of a job, and instead of asking for a job, instead of going like, hey, do you have anything going on? I'm looking for work. That sounds more desperate. It's more of like, I just want to let you know I have some availability coming up. That also sounds as a better way to approach it. Oh, when they make it sound like that, they're like, we should see if we can finally get Joe or David or Bobby on this project. I just entered. I just said all male names: Heather, Melissa, Joe, Brian, and Teresa. So I just want to make sure. So I'm equal. I'm equal. I swear. So, but telling them you're available in advance is a good thing too. Don't just like scramble when you're out of a job and be like, oh, I'm looking for work type thing. Just be a little bit more low key about it.
Yeah, and when you mentioned the conventions and talking with people, do you have some tips for someone who is really shy and they just have a booth and they want to approach the people? Like, what do you usually ask? Like, oh, how is your day? Or someone who comes to your booth, is there something?
Yeah, I think people who are shy. Well, look, it's funny. People have a hard time believing. I was very shy as a kid. I don't think no one believes me. No one in my car. My wife's like, what? So, the way I can remember being shy, you're worried about embarrassing yourself, or if someone's not gonna like it can be sometimes an insecurity thing, or you're just shy and just a quiet person. So I think shy people maybe don't want to talk. Like when I was shy, I didn't want to talk about myself. So honestly, like say hi, how are you doing, and make it about them. But just be a pleasant, nice person. If you're going up to, if you have a booth and you're shy, let your artwork speak for yourself. And you're shy, you're not gonna be shoving in someone's face. But if someone comes up to you and just say hello, and that's the first thing, say hello, And sometimes, I've asked people hello, and they're like, oh, I'm just looking, and I'm like, okay, I'm not trying to sell you anything, just saying hi. That's the way it is. Because other people obviously are forcing stuff on them. Yeah. So just and you can say, hey, how you doing? Like, are you having a good time? Are you having a good time? Which is, how are you having a good time about the show? That's a good way to say it. Like, and yeah, no, it's okay. I'm a little tired. How are you doing? And then, be like, oh, I'm okay. Just kind of keep it casual, and you can drop the conversation there, and then just let them peruse your work. If you're going up to people, that's a little bit harder. I've had many people come up to me and they're nervous to talk to me, and I try to make them feel at ease. I say, don't be nervous. I'm a normal person. I put my shoes one foot on a time, just like you, one pant leg at a time, and then I just say, what do you do? I try to make it about them, and very calming too. Those are kind of some tips for things as well. Like, and when you come up and talk to me, like I said, a lot of us are really nice. And if they're not, screw that person. If that artist's not nice to you, okay? Like,
just avoid them, yeah.
avoid them. Unfortunately, I mean, and there are some people who have gotten so high in the industry that they have an ego and they may be like that, but most of us are not. We know what it's like. We've been where you are. So just honestly, just coming up and saying hello. That's why email is a good thing. Like, you could meet me at a convention. You're too nervous to talk to me. Take my card and email me at a later date and talk the way. That's a great way of kind of being, of keeping a wall up if you're that shy and just being able to type, responses.
Yeah, true. And that's definitely really good advice for someone who is just shy and they want to try it out and they're worried like, oh, what if I go to convention and what do I do then? So so they should definitely try this out and see how that goes, and next time it will be better. So yeah.
For sure.
And what about then future? One of my last questions would be about, what would you like to work on, or how would you imagine your dream scenario in 5 to 10 years? Like, if you cannot fail and everything is going according to the plan, and also in 100 years, what would you like to be remembered for? This far future.
I don't like to talk about 100 years because then I'm not here. Okay. Honestly, if I could have anything, I'd like to design the next Hello Kitty. And it's not literally Hello Kitty. I would love to, passive income is a big thing to me and my own brand. I don't want to work for studios forever. I don't want to have to work for studios. I like to be able to choose to work for studios. And I say Hello Kitty because it's one of the biggest successful brands out there. And you basically get mailbox money from that. So that's honestly, like, if I couldn't fail, and I could only fail forward, I should say, to use your words and other people's words.
Not my quote, but yeah.
I know,
exactly.
I know, but you know what I mean. You brought it up.
Yes, definitely.
So something like that, where it's basically branded on everything, and it's something that I created, and it's my own, for that matter. Because I think trading time for money is, you never get ahead doing that way. I mean, look, I have a house. I've got 2 children. I support my wife, my kids, and my dog, and we get by with what I do. But I do a lot. I work very hard to kind of keep this going, and it would be nice to get more passive income. That's why I'm trying to start, with my apparel brand, or I'm actually also writing this movie with someone. It'd be great to sell that and see that get made. And always trying different things. I'm now in the process of possibly illustrating a book for a very big title. I cannot talk about that right now, but that's something that I've never done before too. So I'm always trying something new. But I think it's a matter of, like I said, designing the next Hello Kitty is always the best way to put it, if that makes sense. Some people, it's a lot of guys I work with who are story guys, they only want to sell their own ideas and pitch ideas and make their own movies. I do, like the movie that I want to sell for my this live action movie, I want nothing to do with it. I want to sell it and just be the executive producer, be able to give notes. First of all, I wouldn't even begin to know how to direct a live action film. I was asked on a movie recently, a project I brainstormed with a very well-known director, and the producer came back to me and said, you deserve to be in the chair. And I didn't know what that meant. She means the director chair. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. I'm pretty self-aware, and I know that I'm not that experienced with story yet. I know there are people who are better than me. I know what I'm doing, but I'm very self-aware of where I am, my station is in life right now. But they said, if you weren't afraid, then you wouldn't be a good director. And, because there are 2 things that make a good director, and that is respect your team and don't pretend something when you don't. Don't pretend to know something that you really do not know, So it's okay to not know everything. And I know I'm going off tangent with what you said, but there's a children's book. I have an idea for my own movie. There's a children's book. So there's a lot of things in that line. But I think passive income is the thing, because then I could do my own illustrations for myself and stick to becoming a real artist, which is I did this for me. Yeah. And I think that's one thing why sometimes people find my work appealing, is because I'm doing it for me. This is something that I like doing. There was a time in my career where I felt there was a stigma that I was the animal guy. And I was like, I do other things. And I started doing sketchbooks to show people. And then I realized, I'm like, no. I am the animal guy, damn it. I'm like, that's who I am. And I really owned it, I should say, and accepted it and encouraged it and grew it. And now that's my brand. That's who I am, and I'm totally fine being known for that, I've been called that in a meeting, and executives have stood in and be like, no, he does other things. Don't call him that. I was like, it's okay. It's how they relate me. It's not, I'm not insulted. Yes, I do other things type thing. So, like I said, being able to do my own work in such a way that I've created some of this other, almost like legacy in that matter of creating a product that lives on forever. And in terms of 100 years, I just would like to be well known as a good person, as one who was a really good father and good husband, and people liked being around. Beyond like my art, I think it's just a matter of being a good person in life, and I pride myself on that. And I make mistakes, and I've made mistakes, and I will continue to make mistakes as an individual. And that goes back to what I said before about having integrity and being great to work with. That's part of being a good person. And I think that trumps many other things. And I've been heard that sometimes that outweighs talent, because you could work with a talented, egotistical a-hole, or you could work with either someone like me, not to say I'm talentless, but like maybe I'm not to the level of the person, this imaginary person I'm talking about, but somebody might want to work more with me because I'm a pleasure to work with, and we can collaborate together. We won't keep butting heads,
Definitely, because then you can also just positively inspire people, and they just feel good around. So that's definitely a good point.
I think that's the 100-year question. That's definitely something. It's just being someone who like everyone enjoyed getting to know. Because I don't want to be the person like, oh, that guy was the biggest a-hole to work with. Man, he was amazingly talented, but he was a shut-in, and no one ever saw him, and he was the best wildlife artist ever. But he was kind of a recluse, and no one really knew him. That's not. I would rather be a lesser artist and be known as a greater person.
For sure. That's a very good point, because who wants to be around not nice people? So avoiding them, exactly as you mentioned. And before we finish, maybe you can share last piece of advice and a key takeaway, and then we'll slowly end.
Okay. God, I've given so much advice through all of this.
The main one.
Well, there's a lot of things. Do something else. This is all about art and everything. This was given to me. Charles and Billis told me this a long time ago. He ran a small school called the Animation Academy. I think he's still around. Do something else. Sell jelly beans. Go to the beach, watch movies, find something else you're interested in and passionate about. It'll make you a better artist. Like for me, I like I said, you spend your life trying to become a really good artist, and then you die, and then or you're only here for a short time in the scheme of things, in the scheme of the universe, I should say. But like for me, I'm very passionate about running and swimming for me on my own. So that's something I really like doing. I love cooking. I mean, I'm big on grilling and smoking all different types of meats and stuff like that. I mean, so there's other things I like to do. I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be selling stuff. Like I said, Charles said, sell jelly beans, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like even with my career, I now have story and design, and they're like my two daughters. I love them for different reasons, So I definitely have diversified, and it's made my career more interesting. It's helped me be a little bit more secure in terms of job related. But I think it's important to just have an idea of contrast in your life. This bigger picture relates to design. Really good design has contrast, shape, straight against curve, and small versus big, small, medium, large, and complex versus simple. But to have balance in your life, you have to have contrast. It almost sounds like that's so weird that you would say that, like in order to live a balanced life, you have to have contrast, but it's true. So contrast on your skill level, but contrast in terms of life, in terms of doing other things. And then you'll have a very balanced, happy life.
Yeah. So you can do other things, as you mentioned, finding other hobbies, so you don't spend like 100% of your time locked in your apartment just drawing or something like that.
Exactly, you're studying like that. So I think that was your question, yeah?
Yep.
Was there one more question? Okay, great.
Yeah, so we were just talking, exactly, like what is the key takeaway, and then as you mentioned, like how do you want to live your life? So definitely that's a good thing to think about, that it's not only about art when you want to be better artists, and just, everything falls into place.
Yeah, it makes you a better artist not to make it just about art. By enjoying life and life's experiences, you become an artist, because art imitates life. And that's my takeaway.
Yeah, you need to experience life as well, aside of the artwork. So yeah,
sure.
Definitely. And so thank you so much again for being here. It was so nice, informative, and so many tips.
I hope so. And like I said, feel free to share my email with your podcast and all that stuff. And I'm happy to talk to people. And any plug you give me, I'm always appreciative of as well. So.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, so people can contact you. So hopefully everyone now is inspired and now they can go do stuff. So thanks everyone who was watching or listening, and yeah, see you guys in the next episode.
Okay, take care. Bye. Nice meeting you.
Bye.
Everyone, cheers.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe because I post new videos every week. I would be also super happy if you let me know your thoughts in comments and give the video a thumbs up. You can find all the resources mentioned in this episode at artsideoflife.com. Just type a guest name in the search bar. There is also a couple of free artist resources ready for you. So if you want to listen to the interviews on the go too, make sure to check out the podcast at artsideoflife.com/podcast. Continue to inspire each other, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye!